Welcome to Straight from the Mouth. I am Anthony, and this is my Dark Knight mug. Dark Knight Rises mug. Figured that was fitting. Christopher Nolan, Interstellar, all that. Forgive me for drinking in front of you. I watched the movie at 3 a.m., and I'm quite tired. I've also got a t-shirt that perfectly suits the film. Now, this is a spoiler review, so this is assuming you've seen the movie, and therefore this shirt should make perfect sense to you. And if it doesn't make sense to you, you should stop watching this. Let's talk about a couple of things. First off, story. I love the story. I thought it was pretty cool. Essentially, the idea is Matthew McConaughey is this scientist-minded guy who lives in a time where his skills are not really necessary. Humanity is kind of post-science, and they're regressing back to pre-science in a way. There's really no more war. Humanity's enemy now is just hunger and the potential lack of oxygen. I enjoyed Nolan's concept of the future where we're experiencing heavy drought, and we have really come to that point where we have to reach out into space to find an answer. I mean, because that's really, in reality, that is the answer, is we have to leave Earth to survive. There is an expiration date to Earth. There is an expiration date to our solar system. The only way for us to persevere and keep going is to eventually leave our solar system. The landscape that Nolan paints where we haven't left our solar system, it's into the future. He doesn't specify when, but it's into the future and we still haven't left our solar system. We're still on Earth and things have regressed. I think that's realistic. I think that totally could happen. Looking at the way our politicians argue back and forth, it's totally conceivable that we would just kind of give up on science. Right now, less than 1% of every dollar we spend on taxes goes into the space program. I'm not sure how believable it is that they would be able to cobble all this together in secret without drawing attention to itself, but it's a movie. But everything that happened along the way, it's like, outside of it being occasionally predictable, I thought the story was pretty solid. I was on board for the whole journey. The fact that people stopped believing that we went to the moon, I thought was actually really interesting. The way they handled that, where it felt real, like they treated the moon landing as this silly notion that never actually happened. I thought that was cool. I can't think of another movie that has told this story, or at least this story this way. I mean, we've had movies that were about going into space in order to save humanity. We got a ton of them. I mean, there's not as well crafted as this, but there's Armageddon. There's that movie Sunshine, which is kind of a weird horror movie where they had to reinvigorate the sun somehow by sending nuclear bombs into it or something. I didn't really understand it. The sun was dying and they had to wake it back up. I guess Armageddon wasn't really about going into space to get an answer, but to just forget Armageddon. The story was, in my opinion, actually pretty well structured. It was structured almost too well, to the point that I kind of saw things coming. When Matt Damon was going to turn on them, that almost the moment he woke up, I'm like, shit is gonna go bad. I don't know why, I don't know how yet, but I feel like something bad is gonna happen with this guy specifically. Sure enough, when they were both standing up there on the mountain, kind of overlooking the exoplanet landscape, and Matt Damon kind of looked at him, I'm like, oh shit, something. I thought for sure he was just gonna shove him off, but I'm like, he can't die. How is he gonna do this? What I really, really loved about the story is how it was just kind of very circular. It was like a movie poem in a way, where everything that happened in the film kind of circled back. It felt very whole. I mean, that was the entire point. The people who were helping them in the future was reaching back to help us out so we can survive. This requires letting go of straight narrative logic. There's theories that space is circular, that the universe is circular. And so the idea, especially when he was inside the black hole and he was seeing all those different moments, is that time is always. And the idea that there is a humanity in the future that has to send things back through time like a wormhole to help us in order to eventually be that humanity. It'll break your brain if you think about it too much, but thinking of time as this thing that's always, where things always have to exist, makes sense of it in a weird kind of way. You can't change the past. That was a rule established in the film. Matthew McConaughey, at one point while he was in the black hole, was trying to change the outcome of where he ended up. The film makes a point that the past cannot be undone. The past has to be done the way it is, and that actually follows certain rules of physics. I don't know the math, I don't really understand it all, but if you were to go back through time to try to change things, physics would find a way to correct itself out so that you couldn't quite change it. It would realign itself with being the same thing again. I don't know if you guys ever seen The Time Machine, but it's kind of like that, where every time dude went back to try to save his girlfriend, his wife, whatever it was, she died. She died in every single outcome. When he wakes up in the future, there's like so many ways that could have been mishandled. The only thing I maybe disagree with is Matthew McConaughey walks into the room and he's got all these grandchildren and great-grandchildren, and he doesn't give a shit about any of them. I'm like, dude, this is your line, this is your descendants, and you're not gonna talk to any of them? You're just gonna take off? That one I was a little iffy on, because I've always had this weird obsession with the idea of, like, if I had a kid at 20 years old, and then they had a kid at 20 years old, and they had a kid at 20 years old, that's how I'm 80, I can see my great-great-grandchildren. How awesome would that be? But no, not this guy. He's just like, fuck you guys, and then takes off. And he never even spoke to his son. I guess the assumption is his son passed away from all the lung damage because he was such a stubborn bastard and wouldn't listen to his sister, who is clearly fucking brilliant. I suppose the audience has a vantage point that that character doesn't, even though he's been next to her for 40 years. Somehow he is too blind to see that she is way smarter than he is and has way more knowledge than him, but he's gonna put his whole family in danger. That point when Matthew McConaughey was dropping through the black hole, I was ready to start doubting the film. The fact that they could circle the black hole at all, black holes pull stars around at unimaginable speeds. And they did establish that this was an older black hole, but I would think even an older black hole would pull stars around really fucking fast. So the fact that they're able to just kind of fly around the black hole and just willy-nilly, I'm like, okay, it's a movie, it's fine, but they would die. Matthew McConaughey, as soon as he like kind of drops into that black hole, the whole ship would have been spaghettified, just stretched beyond its limits until it's completely broken. The moment he dropped into the black hole, I knew that something was going to happen related to these distant humans in the future. They weren't just gonna kill him off. And that, I guess, is a little bit of a dig against Nolan, is that it's like at no point did I feel like he was actually going to die. They didn't set that up properly. It kind of came out of nowhere, the music was going, it was a big action scene. Okay, second ship is gonna drop. And she's like, no, what? What are you talking about? He's like, go on, 90% truth, all that business. He drops out of nowhere, and it's like, I wouldn't ever think Nolan's just gonna kill off my main character that way. Ever. Ever, ever, ever. I think it would have been better if they built that up a little bit, where they had this discussion. Something like almost in the one scene I give credit to Armageddon for is the moment when Bruce Willis decides that he's gonna be the one to blow up the asteroid, and he pushes Ben Affleck back into the ship. That was more touching to me than this moment when he drops his ship into the black hole. I didn't believe for a second he was gonna die. I think the film did a good job of answering all the questions that it inspires you to ask. In general, I thought the acting was pretty good in this movie. I've come around to Matthew McConaughey, with the exception of his stupid car commercial. I don't even know what he's doing in that car commercial. People drive, I drive. I've been driving a Lincoln since before they paid me to drive a Lincoln. But now they pay me to drive a Lincoln, so I'm driving a Lincoln. I'm like, what the fuck, dude? I don't understand what you're doing. Do you not get enough money from your movies that now you have to do a car commercial? This guy must be in debt or something for him to do a car commercial that is that retarded. Anyway, totally not the point. Dallas Buyers Club, he did an excellent job. I haven't seen True Detective yet, but apparently he's amazing in that. And then this. I'm like, wow, I'm on board with Matthew McConaughey. I used to kind of hate him. Oh, Mud. That's another one. He did Mud, and that was great. He was great in Mud. I wish he would find a way to not always do that Southern drawl. He's got enough money now. He could pay a coach to teach him how to not do it anymore. Maybe, perhaps. I don't know. Here's hoping. Matthew McConaughey did a great job in this movie. And so did Catwoman, for the most part. That one part where she was doing that little monologue talking about how her love for this guy on this planet wasn't affecting her judgment. It was pushing it a little bit, but, I mean, personally, I would have dialed it back a little bit. All the ancillary characters in the film, they did a great job with casting because everybody did an A+ job. One of the only parts of the film that bothered me a lot was when Matt Damon was giving his speech after he knocked Matthew McConaughey in the face. I'm like, why are you talking, man? Why are you doing this thing that classic, typical bad guys in every other movie does? Like, why are you giving this huge speech saying, I thought I could watch you die, but I can't, I'm sorry. It's like, what? As if you told him that. What difference does it make to him if you watch him die? He's dying. He doesn't want you to watch him die. I don't understand where this is coming from. I can only chuck it up to this guy being a crazy person because he's been isolated for so long, with the exception of that speech, and that's not his fault, that's the script. I enjoyed Matt Damon being in this movie. I thought it was a pleasant surprise. It was a little distracting at first when he woke up. I'm like, oh my god, it's Matt Damon, he's in this movie. And the whole moment when he's crying because he hasn't seen a face in so long, I'm like, that's Matt Damon, that's fucking Matt Damon. Matt Damon's in this movie. How is Matt Damon in Interstellar and Nolan kept this totally under the lid? I have no idea how Matt Damon is in this movie. And then he's done crying, and I completely missed the emotional moment that was happening. Did everybody else know Matt Damon was in this movie, and I'm the only one that didn't? So, direction and cinematography, it's kind of, well, no, with Nolan, it's, one and the same. This movie almost had me leaping out of my chair at one point. That scene when Matt Damon goes into the little hole, whatever that is, and they keep telling him, don't do it, don't do it! And then he's like, I'm doing this for humanity, and then he just completely sucked into space. I'm like, holy shit, this is amazing. And the thing kind of blows up a little bit. It's like, holy crap, we're fucked. We are so screwed right now. I had no idea what was going to happen in that moment. And when Matthew McConaughey is flying up and he's lining up with the thing, the station that's spinning, I had the biggest smile on my face. And I was just so happy. I'm like, wow, oh my god. And then they did the shot when it's looking down at the ship and it's like not in sync. And then eventually I'm like, it's got to get in sync, it's got to get in sync. And then it gets in sync. I'm like, I feel so good right now. I don't know why. I thought that scene was just like, it was cinematically beautiful. It was so suspenseful. That was such a cool scene. Oh, that moment when they're going that moment when they're going through the wormhole for the first time. I mean, nobody knows what it looks like when you go through a wormhole. How else are you going to handle that? And the way Nolan handled it was really cool. I mean, just visually, it was the ways time and space was being stretched around. It was very imaginative. It's like, what other movie is there out there that has done this visually? There's no movie out there that has done this visually. And when they're on the planet and the wave is coming, it was so pretty. Even when things were going completely to hell, everything was really pretty in this movie. I have no idea why the water was so shallow if the waves were that high, but it's an exoplanet and anything can happen on these other planets. One of my favorite moments in this film was them going into that water exoplanet, because you kind of know what's gonna happen. You know they're gonna go in and time is gonna go dramatic. Like, shit is gonna go wrong and time is gonna elapse a lot more than they wanted it to. And of course, things go wrong. And when they get back up to the space station, dude's 23 years older, and he's like, I've been waiting a long time. 23 years have passed. I have never seen a movie that has done that before. Maybe I need to watch more science fiction, but I've never seen a movie where these characters go down and they come up and time has passed. It's like nothing can be done. Nothing can reverse this situation. It's just this constant moving forward as these problems arise. Normally in science fiction, they find a way to reverse these things. They go back in time or whatever, or they go through like a chamber to undo the aging that has been done. But it's like, nope, this is the consequence that happens when you are playing with the theory of relativity. I suppose, going back to the acting for just a second, I suppose the crying was a little much, and he cried a lot in this movie. He's just a lot. I'm like, dude, okay, he's just like, stop, just stop crying so much. I get it, it sucks, it hurts. Internalize a little bit more. Talking about how cinematic the movie is and the directing and all that, and Nolan's directing, it's heavily tied into the visual effects, obviously. And the visual effects was stunning. There was not a single moment in this movie where I was like, that looks kind of fake, as I normally do with films nowadays, because it's gotten to the point where they're trying to put out films as quick as possible, and so visual effects often get to, this is good enough, and now we're going to stop, rather than crafting it as well as they can. They hit what's just acceptable and they move on, they push it through. Whereas with this, and I suppose like Gravity, and going even further to Jurassic Park, they made it look as real as they could. I don't know how much was practical effects and how much was completely visual effects. There was nothing in the visual effects that took me out of the story at all, ever. I suppose the last thing to talk about is the sheer length of the movie. It was 3 hours or close to it, and I was watching this film at 3 in the morning. I got maybe 2 hours of sleep, because I couldn't fall asleep, because whenever I want to fall asleep, I don't. So I got maybe 2 hours of sleep. I make myself get out of bed. I eat a quick breakfast, I go to the movie. You don't want to hear that, so I'll stop talking about it. I was immersed in this movie, and I had fun. I was involved. For me, that says a lot about the film. That this 3-hour movie kept me immersed, even with only 2 hours of sleep. if that is not a statement that validates you gotta see this movie, I don't know what is. Even if you don't like the film, I would think that it was interesting enough the entire time that it kept you awake, it kept you interested in what was going on, it kept you wanting to find out what was going to happen. Overall, I love this movie. This falls into my very, very short list of films this year that I love. I think it's going to split audiences. People are going to be very polar about it. And there's going to be lots of disagreements, and that's okay, because that'll inspire discussion. It's already happening with me and my lady, because she hated it. She hated it, and she's the kind of person I would expect that would have liked it. Thank you for watching. Straight from the Mouth, this is Anthony Alba, and good day to you, and enjoy watching Interstellar again.